film is Fantastic Mr. Fox.
You wrote a bad song, Petey.
And this was stop motion animation, and it's done by director Wes Anderson. If you're a fan of Wes Anderson's non-animated films, then you will probably really love Fantastic Mr. Fox. It is definitely within his wheelhouse as far as the style and the writing and everything about it. It's one of my favorite Wes Anderson films. I'm not a huge Wes Anderson fan. And it's a little bit weird kind of having his sensibilities in an animated film, but I do like it. I think it's really creative. It looks so good. I think the world building was so creative. I think the voice talent is all good. It's got George Clooney and Meryl Streep and Bill Murray and a long list of other people. My only problem with it is it's one of those animated films where I always still picture the actor. It still feels like George Clooney. And so sometimes celebrity voices, I think, can actually be a little bit of a distraction. And if it had just been nobody, then I think it might have worked a little bit better. Just the attention to detail is pretty remarkable. I mean, things like, even if you look at sort of the headlines of the newspaper, and there's just this whole world of the animals, that the way that he created fire, the way he created, I liked that they're still animals, they're still wild animals, like the way that when they kill the chickens, it looks actually like a wild animal killing a chicken. The way that they eat, I think, is really, really fun. The way that they do that, just the design is so creative. And I do like the story. I like the book by Roald Dahl. It's clearly about a fox who is the greatest thief around. And he makes a promise to his wife when he finds out that she is going to have a cub, that he won't steal anymore because it's very dangerous. And so he makes this promise, and he ends up working as a newspaper man, which, like I said, the whole world is very, very creative of how there's all the things that are in the human world that's in the animal world, everything down to the newspapers. Newspaper man, but he doesn't really like it. He's not really very happy, and he doesn't like living under the ground, even though that's where foxes are supposed to live. And so he has a dream of living in a tree, and so that kind of starts the story. He ends up moving to a tree, and there are 3 farmers that he decides to have one last haul and to steal from the 3 farmers. And there's also a plot line of his son, Ash, whose cousin, Christopherson, ends up coming to stay with them. And Christopherson seems like the golden child, where Ash doesn't seem like he has anything going for him. And there's also this game that the father was the best at, and of course Christopherson is really good at too, naturally. It doesn't seem like Ash is very good at very many things. And so then it becomes sort of a battle between the foxes and the other animals and the farmers. And so it's really a fun story. It's like the relationship between Mr. and Mrs. Fox. I think they're a really fun little couple. Sometimes it feels like almost a Mr. and Mrs. Incredible, the way that she wants him to be something that he's just not. And I also like that the movie kind of never let the fox's plans go right. Nothing ever goes the way that he thinks, which makes it sort of unexpected and surprising. You don't know exactly what is going to happen. I also really like the music by Alexander Desplat. The soundtrack is also really strong with songs from the Beach Boys and other people. So overall, it is a really enjoyable film. I like it a lot. The only thing for me is that I don't find it that funny, and that's just a personal preference. Sort of the hipster humor that you get with a Wes Anderson film just isn't my favorite kind of humor, and that's not to say it's bad. It's just not my favorite. Okay, the next film that was nominated is Coraline.
Here, when adventure comes knocking,
choo choo.
There are some doors that should never be opened.
And this is one of the films that was in 3D, and I can only imagine how great this must have looked in 3D. Directed by Henry Selick, and he also wrote the screenplay based on the Neil Gaiman graphic novel. And he is Henry Selick. You might not recognize his name, but he's actually the director of Nightmare Before Christmas. It's produced by Leica, and they went on to do Paranorman, and they also did The Box Trolls, which I also liked. And Coraline is a stop-motion animated film. It has a dark feel to it, kind of like Nightmare Before Christmas, and it is about a little girl who is moved by her family to Seattle to this house that's a bunch of apartments called the Pink Palace. So the Pink Palace has kind of a haunted house feel, but her parents have moved there because they are writers about gardening, oddly enough. But Coraline has a hard time getting them to come outside and to play. She wants to get dirty, she wants to actually plant the garden, but they are too busy with everything going on. And they're too busy for her mom to cook a good meal, for her dad to pay any attention to her. Nobody will listen to her. Like the character of Coraline. I think she is so endearing and likable, and she's just bored and she wants to be listened to, but I just find her curious and sweet. So she's kind of bored, but she does meet the different people that live in the palace. She has neighbors, Mrs. Lovett, Mr. Bobinski, who's like a circus acrobat who wants to train mice, and Spink and Forcible, who live in the basement, and they are former vaudeville actresses. There's a boy who lives next door who she thinks is really annoying, who has a grandma who used to live in the Pink Palace, and his name is Wybie. Really bored, and she finds this secret door that is in one of the walls in one of the rooms, and she decides to go through the door, and she is taken to this other world, and the other world is a mere copy of her world, except for everything is better. The mother cooks good food, the father will listen to her, they actually garden. Everything that she likes and that she wants is in this other world, including this other mother and other father. But of course, as we can suspect, all is not as it should be. And the one big difference between the other worlds and her world is that the characters all have buttons for eyes. And it is pretty scary, but maybe it wouldn't be that scary to kids today because people have those Lollapalooza dolls with the button eyes. So maybe it's not that scary to kids today. But to me, when I first saw it, I thought it was pretty scary. Having to go a couple different times, she ends up going to the other world. First, she's tempted, and then other times for different reasons. And there's a lot of really big heart to it. And I liked that she learns to accept her parents for who they are, even though they're not really very good people. And there's something to that, I think. And as soon as she finds out what the stakes are, she will absolutely not consider it. And so she loves her mother, even though her mother's not a very good person. And I think that's kind of cool. And the music is really great. It is also by Bruno Coles, who did Secret of the Kells. So another link between films is one of the voices of the cat is Keith Davis, who is the voice of Dr. Facilier in Princess and the Frog. And there's a great cast in Coraline. There's Dakota Fanning plays Coraline. She's very good. And Terry Hatcher, Jennifer Saunders is very good from Shrek 2. Ian McShane, and then Keith David. So great cast, and it's just really surprising and different and unique, and I really enjoyed it. Then the last film is Pixar's Up.
This summer, journey to a lost world.
Huh?
With these guys.
Ah!
Hi, Mr. Fredrickson. Please let me in.
No. All right.
Disney Pixar's Up.
And I've already talked a lot about Up on this channel, so I feel like I don't want to be too redundant, but I have to talk about it. It's my favorite movie. It's my favorite movie, not just favorite animated film. This was directed by Pete Docter, who had previously done Monsters Incorporated, and he created a story about an older man. And the older man has lost his wife. We don't know exactly how long it has been. He's basically paralyzed by this loss. Like, he has stopped doing anything. He's become bitter. And in the opening, you kind of see why, because they give you the life of this couple, and you see how dear Ellie was to him and what a wonderful person she was. And he also doesn't have children. He doesn't have other things to sort of funnel his energy into. He's left alone, and he is put in a situation where his house is going to be taken from him. And it's like he can't handle one more thing being taken from him in his life. And so he decides to fulfill his wife's dream, the promise that he never gave her. One of his big regrets is going to the South America and seeing the falls. And so he decides that he's going to do it, and he's going to do it in his house. And he was a balloon salesman, so the novelty of this story is you have to believe that he would be able to fill all these balloons in one night and get the house to be lifted up by the balloons, and he navigates himself to South America. But unwittingly, he carries a passenger with him named Russell. And Russell is a little boy, a Boy Scout, who's also very lonely. They end up going on this adventure. And what I love so much about it is you not only get the opening montage where an entire life that I've seen probably 50, 60 something times. I've seen it a lot of times, and I cry every single time. It's just so beautiful to see a whole life and a whole love story. And a lot of people say, well, it goes downhill after that opening montage, and I don't think it does. It's different, but you see how Carl, through the whole time, he talks to Ellie like she is a real person. And it really hit me the first time I saw this movie that, like, the people in my life who have moved on to the other side, that they are palatable forces in my life. And I talk to them sometimes, like Carl does. And I think about what they would say and what they would want me to do. And, when I first saw the movie, I thought it was like getting a hug from my grandpa, who I miss so much. He was my favorite person in the world, and I don't know, every time I watch this movie, it's like getting him back again for a little bit. He really wasn't anything like Carl. He was a wonderful person and very uplifting and wasn't grumpy at all. But I just love him so much, and I don't know, just something about the way he talks to Ellie is something that I'll always cherish, is something I learned from this film. He ends up meeting his hero, Charles Muntz, who was an explorer who was disgraced because nobody believed that he had found this bird. And the one plot hole in the movie that a lot of people bring up is that Muntz and Carl Fredricksen are basically the same age. Well, in Creativity Incorporated, they say that they were going to have Charles Muntz be eating the eggs from the bird, which would give him like eternal life, I guess, or would make him age more slowly. And so that would explain for the difference. But it took up so much time, and it was such a distraction to the story, that they decided to just leave that plot hole in there, and that the movie was strong enough that the people would forgive them. And I think at least I do, relief to the film with the dogs that have voice boxes. And so there's a lot of comedy, and Doug the dog, who they get to meet. And of course, Charles Muntz isn't quite the person that Carl believed him to be. And so there's sort of some battling between Muntz and Fredricksen and Russell. But the main part that I love about the movie is just this idea of like memories controlling your life, and that through the course of the adventure that Carl goes on, he realizes that there's something that he has to live for. And he realizes that he can give back to somebody like Russell. And he realizes that Ellie has forgiven him. That's a beautiful thing. He feels so guilty about not having given Ellie the life that he thinks she deserved. A lot of people can relate to that when you lose somebody and you just feel like this regret that you didn't say the things that you wish you'd said or do the things you wish you could have done. And so he finally gets a message from her at the end where she tells him, "Thanks for the great adventure." And I just think that's so beautiful and moving and wonderful. and I love it. And in an odd way, I think the ending is equally as strong as the beginning, is that opening montage when he reads that in that album, Thanks for the Great Adventure. It's just so great. So I think it's basically a perfect film. I wouldn't change a thing about it. I think that the music by Michael Giacchino is some of the best music in any score in any movie. I also just think it looks really beautiful. I think it looks sweeping and gorgeous, and the falls look beautiful. And so it's just an entertaining, sweet, wonderful film, and it is my favorite movie. So there you go. So obviously I think the right one won in this case. Up was nominated for Best Picture. It obviously won this category of Best Animated Film, and I think it was deserved, even though I really do like all five. And I think all five have a case. So let me know what you would pick out of these five. They're all so different. So that is 2009, and we are going to 2010 next, where my Tangled got snubbed. But it should be fun to check it out. So thanks so much. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.